don't back anything. Yeah, it's that time again. We're talking about all the games on crowdfunding that you shouldn't back. Why? And I'm going to try and do my best to convince you that you don't need to spend your money there. And as always, like I say, if I'm wrong, if you want it anyway, if I'm screwing it up completely, misconstruing it, or leading you astray, you can still go back it, because I'm just trying to prevent you and your wallet from being separated by FOMO, or from being separated by something you already have or that you think you're going to like and you don't actually know if you're going to like, and you're going to spend triple digits on to find out, right? You don't want to be in that situation. You want a game that you can actually keep, store, play, and enjoy. All of those things. Let's go. Cyberpunk 2077. You heard me talk about it from Go On Board when it launched on crowdfunding right now. The question you have to ask yourself is, do you feel like you have enough information at all for this semi-real-time cooperative-esque scenario-driven linked scenario campaign style system that they've got going on here? Do you feel comfortable with all of the different modes that they're offering you? Do you feel comfortable with the rule book? Wait, at the time of me filming this, there is no rule book yet. Now, again, they've clarified it in the comment section on Board Game Geek to say we have a rule book, essentially, so we don't want to put it out. But that begs the question, right? If you have, a dozen or so channels, a dozen or so content folks, I hate the term content creator, being able to play a scenario, play a situation in order to film stuff, in order to get the, exposure there in the first place. Why is that good enough for some of those folks and not good enough for the lay people? That's where my discrepancy comes in. And my other fear is, similarly with The Witcher and the Old World, is that you may not have any more information solidly on either of the other modes that go along with these types of games until literally the pledge manager is closing. Because we just, quite frankly, literally saw that with Dragon Eclipse, where they're like, I don't know, like a week or less than a month before the pledge manager's closing. The pledge manager, almost a year out from when it closed, of them going, here's the full rulebook. Like, really? Like, again, I'm all for making sure you have as much information that you can have in order to make a decision. But there's also part of FOMO that is the time element of things, not just the actual information, right? If I tell you, here's all the information, now make a decision an hour from now, versus here's all the information and make a decision a month from now or 6 months from now, right? Those are completely different scenarios, and you're gonna have a lot more time to process, discuss, and figure out the information, even if it's the same amount of information going on in both cases. Stretch goals are not going to be the issue. Exclusivity with Go On Board is not going to be the issue. The old world box, the stretch goals things for, the previous Witcher game is going for Godzooks amount of money on the secondary market still. So it doesn't look like maybe they've got as much here. So we'll kind of see. But I mean, you're going to be getting it in terms of funding, which again, we've seen now more recently, more of a trend, significantly so even since The Witcher, the Old World, where exclusivity is becoming a lot less popular, but we'll give you bundle deals. Well, bundle deals are great, but I'm still paying more for stuff that I'm not sure if I want. And that's where you have to really ask yourself. The other thing, I had a problem with this page, right? This is tactical, action driven from a story standpoint. I just saw comments on this on the other day on another game that I was talking about with the must-haves previously on crowdfunding for September, right? This is literally what we're doing right now. The only of this year as opposed to the last couple of years. And the question was, well, the narrative in this game, was it actually important? And so that's the question I have with a lot of these games, whether it's any of those Frosthaven's, like, how much is the story actually impactful? Or is it more like the Simon situation with True Vang Legends, where, you know what, you kind of read the fluff, but at the same time, the fluff is, also not terribly important at times, and you just kind of choose the answer that you want to because you may not ultimately have enough control over it in the first place, and you're just randomly guessing at things because there's no way to predict which outcome is going to give you which answer. Which of these types of situations is it going to give you? 35 hours of gameplay. I mean, again, that's fine after mission generator. I look at that as similar to the print and plays, where you have print and plays that in the past, like Sunshine City that I backed, they're like, here, you can make an endless generator of all the other print and play maps. Well, truth be told, how many times are you actually going to use that? So again, it seems like a very good deal up front, but it almost gives me vibes of like why you see marketing price-wise things saying they're $99.99 plus shipping instead of $100 plus whatever. It's that subtle difference, marketing manipulation, that I see going on from this aspect of things too. And stretch pay. Someday I'm going to do a full video on that, talking about, I feel like it's like a predatory loan situation, although at least the main difference there, and I guess it's really not though at the same time, is because they're not charging interest at exorbitant rates. They're just basically letting you pay it over increments without any. So that's actually not terrible, but Anyway, it speaks to more just consumerism from a rampant side of consumer. Hey, I'm tangent, soapbox. Anyway, squirrel. But I mean, that's, not insignificant amount of money there, right? $60 essentially for a slightly deluxe version. And is that better? Is that not better? I mean, either way, you're getting the stretch goals. So how important are these deluxifications right here? And that's when they go down here a little bit, and they do give a little bit of kudos here because a lot of the deluxifications are just the extra miniatures. And that's what's really focusing here on the picture. But otherwise, the exact details of that, at least at this point on the page, you can't really tell. So you're going to have to scroll down. You can see the 3.5 expansions that they've got here already, included at the time of me filming this. You can also get your thermal mug, your metal poster, your plushie, and your pins, but don't feel bad because you can also get your stickers here in the stretch goals. And so it's just kind of, okay, here you can kind of start to see, okay, this is a deluxe stretch goal. So it's, again, the miniatures, all of the other ones are that. So I guess I'd make the argument that unless you really want them all to match, and that's the FOMO here, you get people to upgrade for $60, which again is not an insignificant difference. And I make the sense that they're probably already included in all of that price point because most stretch goals on a lot of these campaigns are not necessarily true stretch goals. Some campaigns do have them, some it's kind of just hard blurring of the lines or blurring of reality in that sense about whether or not they're actually the case. More content though, either way, and so that's what you have to ask yourself. Do you feel comfortable as we scroll down here and you start to see all the components, how do you play? Well, the problem is you're gonna have to watch a video here because there's nothing. We're still on the how to destroy things and the actions in effect. You can watch a little bit of the prologue here. But again, that's my big criticism of this in the first place. And I guess I'd say, can you really call these reviews? Because if you're telling me you don't have a complete rulebook, you don't have complete modes, so I guess I would look at this and go, I don't think I could call this a review. There are plenty of other games that I've seen come on crowdfunding, that I've seen, firsthand, hands-on, that are like basically final copies. They're like pre-production final copies for the actual use of the campaign, and then you can call it reviews. But when you've got this and you're not even sharing the rulebook, I guess I would wager that kind of my other concern with some of the Awakened Realm stuff, in the sense that, okay, we're going to like customize it and tailor it, and we're going to listen to your feedback, especially with what's going on with Grim Coven right now in the comment section and the updates there of how they're adapting mechanics and modules and, difficulties and all that sort of thing. Well, it appears you're still doing this. So, if you're telling me your review is based off of what it is now, and you're going to give me a significant product here a year from now in the Pledge Manager with a full rulebook that's actually going to explain things more in detail, like, I don't know if these videos are going to be that useful, except for to maybe give me the most basic overarching situational experiences that you could have, because otherwise it might be significantly different in terms of the actual nuance of it. Because again, like, it's not that mechanics are going to be bad in these situations. I was just talking about my 3 biggest cooperative games from last year: Defenders of the Wild, Wyrmwood Manor, and Flock Together. And I said, okay, well, those are all cooperative, they're all Pandemic-esque style, they're all doing things with a little bit different vibe. But how do you tell the difference? Is the nuance. And unless I have some of that hands-on nuance of a final product, you can't really always tell what that's going to be and how that's going to be fitting for you. So that would be my big concern from that side of things. Again, I don't think it's going to be a bad product, but the question is, how high is the ceiling, how low is the basement, and whether or not it's actually going to be right for you if you're going to spend $300+ right now to get all of this stuff, because you don't know, again, like a Marvel United situation, which one of those expansions are actually going to be suited or tailored to your needs in the first place. Now we've got Puerto Rico Special Edition. As if a game less than 2 years old needs a special edition, an upgraded edition, or improved art. No, it doesn't. And someone was saying to me, like, Chris, this is going to be so much easier to get to the table. There's going to be a big box insert, and there's going to be organization, and there's going to be trays, and there's going to be... Folks, at some point, a box gets so big that even with all of that stuff, it still is going to be a headache, a mess to put away, to punch, to get out in the first place, as opposed to a game that is a quarter of its size. I don't care what you say from that aspect. Also, these boats look horrible to me, truth be told. I look at that as my Valley of the Vikings. If you're not familiar with this kid's game, you have these cardboard boats. All they do is hold the coins that you earn in the game. Zero functionality. And I can't speak to whether this has functionality in this game. I'm not as, enamored or interested in Puerto Rico in the first place. It's a game that I'd love to play sometime, but I'm never going to buy. Maybe I'll trade for an old copy. And, test it out. But I look at that and I go, jumping the shark a little bit, right? It's Galactus miniature all over again. Say a spade's a spade. It's deluxification in a different way. And so if you don't like metal coins, the boats are the same thing in my boat. Ha! But that's what you got to wonder. Now, the only reason I could wager that you might be backing this is if you're looking at a solo mode, right? Because this has the solo mode. Because as you know, every game needs a solo mode, right? Even those area control games with the player counts from normally recommended 3 to 5. I'm joking, but that's why you're looking at this. Because you're also, with this new expansion, right? With the 3 or 4 other expansions that are on this page as well, at the time of me filming this, you're never going to play through all of them. Unless you're a hardcore Puerto Rico, again, just like with Castles of Burgundy, which is sitting right down there next to me, between, the light and then me and Primal all sitting down there, you're never going to play all of them. You're never going to play all of them. You're never going to play anywhere near all of them. You're not going to be able to bring this box to anybody else's house. You're not going to be able to bring it to any game night or convention. It's going to stay there. And is that what you want? And if most of you are going to say, yeah, Chris, at the same time, when I look at all of these, right, 2 boxes for stuff, miniatures for Castles of Burgundy. Again, I'm not going to argue that some of those things, playmat, some of the dual layer player board-esque deluxeifications can be incredibly useful. Those are few and far between. Don't kid yourself, right? And again, it's, basically going to cost you an arm and a leg to get this upgraded edition if you really want it. Is it going to be that much better? And I don't know. I am not familiar, like I said. I look at this and I go, okay, you increased the building tiles, you increased it for readability, and you increased the artwork. Did those things actually need to be improved? Was that a major concern of the game? Or did you just kind of take it upon yourself to say that it was a problem and it wasn't really a problem in the first place? That's what you have to consider with this, right? I mean, it's nice. People are like, oh, well, this is going to help me get it to the table easier. Well, I mean, people like pretty things, but you know what people like as well? Things that get to the table a lot faster. Sorry, I couldn't resist myself there. I mean, again, did it need a new art style? No, I frankly don't think it did. And customizable ships, I mean, this just looks, and I don't want to use the word fiddly, right? But this looks laborious in terms of placing these and storing these and interchanging these. And, it's going to look really, really freaking cool. But the practical application of it, I worry about. I really worry about that. And, oh my gosh, can you imagine trying to set up and tear down all of this, right? For all of you that are arguing in the comment section that the setup and tear down of having to maneuver, muster, distinguish between all of these are going to be even easier, right? Which is why, again, my one recommendation, strongly against Castle of Burgundy was the castle miniatures. Because this is the same sort of situation. When a flat piece is going to do completely and utterly ridiculously well, regardless. Do you need all those expansions? 4 plus an extra? Do you want terrain and all those other things? Art book? You can do it. Let's talk about this for a second, right? Is this game a $300 game for you? $300. And I guess that'd be the first thing I do, right? Is just go over to the old Google and buy somebody's copy for $20 to make sure that you love it if you don't already have a copy. Love it. Like top game of all time, love it. Because otherwise, price point, that's what you're going to wonder and worry about. Because you don't buy it to sell something like this. You buy it because it's a collector's piece for the rest of your life in your collection. Now, whether or not you play it, I'll leave that up to you in the comment section. The big question with this one is, again, do you want Super Deluxeified? And if this is one of your favorite games of all time, I highly recommend it because it is one of my favorite games of all time and I really love the Pharaoh edition. And I actually like the wood version over the acrylic version. However, the big conundrum is, can you improve on perfection? Because I'd argue that does Raw really need anything else extra? And the honest answer is no. I'm willing always to dabble and try because, again, sometimes you have your math in elementary schools where you can get 103% on your test as opposed to just 100%. And so you could have a situation like that with the Traders expansion here. I don't know. I'd love to find out, but I'm not sure I'm willing to risk it. Not because I just, can't get it played, but I just don't know, right? Like, I have trouble getting expansions played for games that I love in the first place. And how do you differentiate? Does it get incorporated? Do you want to incorporate it every time? How do you separate them out? Do you store them together? What if you want to do it sometimes? What if you don't want to do it other times? What if it makes it slightly too complex or slightly, some avenue that you don't like, a la the Cascadia Landmarks expansion, where it's kind of nice, it kind of is necessary, it's kind of unnecessary, all rolled into one? That'd be my big question. And I don't think it's adding anything, dramatic in that sense. It's adding something very straightforward, one really mechanism that you're basing things off of. But you know what? If you're happy and, good enough with things is good enough, well, sometimes you just leave well enough well alone in that way too. Price-wise, it's going to be fine. The only question is if you're Pharaohing and you're FOMOing, then are you going to be able to match it later at retail? And that was the big question as well, especially when Shut Up and Sit Down did it and they sold it out everywhere. So that's where they're coming back around, and that's why I'm covering it. But I mean, it's an auction tile bidding sort of set collection game, and it's a press your luck, and I love it. And you're not going to like it if you don't like those things, but I just said, but it's freaking fantastic. It's one of the best games ever made, and it's probably my top 25 of all time. But don't buy it just because I said so. Buy it because you actually like it and go try someone else's copy in the first place, or buy the retail edition because ultimately you don't really need deluxifications anyway. They're all superfluous and over the top. Everdell Duel. We're going to talk about this one because, again, almost $500,000, just a little over a day at the time of me filming this left. And so what is going to be the incentive? Is this actually going to be as different as you may want? Because, again, I'd make the argument that the issue with some of these games is, can you get away from the base product to entice the people that already have the base game to buy this as well? Or are you going to alienate your base crowd that loves the base game and those is too far away in order to get those people interested in from the same aspect? Is it going to give you more of a flavor of Splendor and Splendor Duel? Because you can make the argument that both of those games are under the same umbrella, but those are also both significantly different games in terms of the mechanics, the styles, the approaches, and the strategy overarching compared to the tactical nature of one versus the other. And with this game, just like with other ones that you've seen, is it going to be just a smaller, more compatible, easier to carry around version of Everdell? Or is it going to be more dynamic in terms of what you're actually bringing to the table and give you a completely different experience? And the honest answer is I'm not really sure. I think it's got vibes and overlapping Venn diagram mechanistically approach of both. And from that aspect, like I was just saying, if you're not sure, what's the answer if you're not sure? If you're not 100% sure, then the answer is no. You can look at the how to play. You can look at the reviews. You can see how you want to do competitive even versus campaign mode. But do you need a campaign mode as well? I'm not sure. I don't know. This is the trend. This is the rage. This is the, new wave of things. All of the zombie sides, Cthulhu, Death May Dies, and the nature scheme of things that we've seen with last year and the waves and trends and, Kickstarters, hotness from that aspect of things. But the duo is the now of the late 2024's. So that's the question you have to ask yourself. And is it going to be up to par of what you're expecting? Because this also has potentially just wait and see. And I think there'd be nothing wrong with that aspect too. If you've got other two-player games that are going to do similar things, or you're looking at like one of the other half dozen that's been announced in the last year, like King of Tokyo, Living Forest, anything else along the lines of like Res Arcana. Which one is going to be your ilk? Which one's going to be your fancy? How is it going to compare? Pest, Guilds of Thokaia. Expansion, second edition. Now, the problem I have with this one, again, is that it goes back to my Kickstarter philosophy is maybe you're just better off getting the second editions the second time around, because the first editions are now, especially with some heavier miniature, I'm going to leave that in there because, screw it. Heavy miniature based games are getting revamps. Narrative scenario driven style of things are getting revamps, errata changed, dealt with, improved upon the second time around. And this one actually looks like it's improving significantly on some of those actual mechanics, which was some of the cause for concern. So I guess the issue with this one is you're getting modules to go along with it, but a lot of the criticisms they addressed in the first one, you're changing things significantly. So you could win over people that are potentially looking at the game as, I didn't like this the first time around, but you also have people then at the same time that are saying, if I didn't like the game the first time around, I'm not sure if anything is going to entice me enough to buy a game to try it a second time again and have it fail a second time, right? There's nothing like buying a game, not liking it, and then buying it again, thinking that somehow your opinion or your taste has changed years later, months later, weeks later, whatever that is, and then finding out that the answer is actually no, right? That is soul-crushing, hobby-destroying feeling. Not really that dramatic. I'm just saying it for the sake of hyperbole right now. But that's what you have to ask yourself with like a little bit of an area control worker placement style of things. And I guess the other thing that I saw in the comment section, and I don't listen to this whatsoever, but the people are like, well, it's not thematic. You're not actually dealing with the pestilence. I thought this was going to be about the pestilence. You're building things up instead. Who cares? It's a dark theme. It's got, sort of the bubonic plague X vibe with the masking situation that people are familiar with, that sort of aesthetic. The question just is, well, are you willing to take a gamble on it? Are you willing to take a gamble that the second time around that they are going to get things right, that's going to be absolutely enticing to you from an overarching, this is a great game standpoint? And you know what? If you are, again, I love the meeples, I love the theme, but the question mark with a lot of these games, it reminds me of like Merchants of the Dark Road. How much? What's the difference? Is it going to be that dramatic? How am I going to feel about it a year later right now? And with this one, again, I can't say that it's not going to do some of those things, because I love the fact that you're improving on those things, you're taking the criticisms and you're improving your product as a whole. But you have to ask yourself, am I willing to take that risk? You know, I'm looking at myself in the mirror and saying, like, Machina Arcana, right? Version 1, version 2, version 3. Guess what? I got in on version 2, and then I felt like I had to buy version 3 in order to actually keep up with the Joneses and make sure that it was going to be something that I liked, even though I'm not really sure I like it, even though it's still going to be something cool. It's just not going to be able to hit the table over the other things that I've already kind of mentioned in that sort of similar niche, if you will. But there you go. We're talking about Pest. Lands of Galzyr. Lands of Galzyr just launched Dreams and Mysteries, the new expansion offering you now 1 to 5 player cooperative and competitive play, $100,000, and it's going to give you a ton of gameplay. It's got an app-driven system that you're going to be using to keep track of things that's going to allow you to adventure. It's open world. It's not necessarily timed or restrained in the same ways that you're used to. In these style of things, it's going to be easier to set up and tear down, but it's also going to just be open. And if you like dramatic conclusions, if you like a fine endpoint to things, this may leave you a little bit wanting. It's going to have a dice-based mechanic system that is going to be a little bit less mitigatable, but it ultimately will have some of that. How much control do you like from those sides of things? Is this style of game that is light, family-friendly, decision-making, sometimes with some control, sometimes with some randomness, up to you? Do you like apps? Because it is using the app, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Ooh, plushie. Plushies do actually entertain me. I look at them. My kids love plushies. Each of my older two has had a plushie since they were 1 year old that they still carry around to this day at ages 10 and 8, respectively. Anyway, not carry around, but they have it in the house and they sleep. Anyway, squirrel. So, I mean, with Snowdale Design here, you're getting what you're getting, and their stuff just doesn't come up anywhere else. So if you are going to get it, I mean, you have to kind of look at it and the crowdfunding. And so this is the one that I'm going to go halvesies on with you. If you want to get it, you should probably get it in the Pledge Manager, because you can get it from their retail shop, the limited availability that they have, but otherwise you're probably going to get a better price on the crowdfunding campaign. But again, I guess the counter argument here would be, is you don't FOMO because you're scared you're not going to be able to get it. You get it because you're not concerned about FOMO, because you know that this fit is going to be right with you in the first place. The skill markers that I mentioned, the quality cards of everything giving you extras along the way, and I'll be having a little bit more of a video content either slightly before or slightly after this video talking about what the expansion is going to add to this book of adventures. So again, this one, like I said, right, like sometimes, are you okay with reading this much narrative? Does narrative like this matter to you? Does mitigation in terms of some of these skill checks, or the ability to balance your skills out and manipulate them along your way as you go, because you can have some fine endpoints if you so choose to add to this game. It does allow you some customization there. And I'd make the argument that this is probably a better cooperative, light Zen-like game than a heavy competitive game. And if you're looking at it more from a competitive open world standpoint, I'd say go look elsewhere. If you're looking at it from a cooperative style standpoint, though, especially as a family weight, I think this one knocks it out of the park, and I think you're going to be very pleased with it. But if that's not the absolute utter thing that you're looking for, I would make the argument that your money may be spent elsewhere. And again, not because this is bad. I think this is a fantastically solid game. I mean, again, look at all these people's quotes. At the same time, it has to be right for you, not because I or anyone else is quoting on the page telling you how freaking awesome it might be. So Snowdale Design puts out solid stuff. I love Dale of Merchants. That's all I got to say. Whether or not it's right for you, you can give it a look-see and check it out. DC deck building, Arkham Asylum. Again, $250,000. The big thing here with Cryptozoic is, why would I get in now, and how much exclusive you're going to offer, and what do the exclusives actually offer in that same sense, right? When we talk about other games or other companies that give out promos or exclusives in the same sense of a card style driven gameplay, I look at Garfield and I go, okay, 12 cards. How many is 12 out of the whole set? Is it 12 out of 60 additional cards? So then you've got essentially a 20% increase that you're getting through the stretch goals, and that's a really significant proportion. Or are you giving me 250 cards here and it ends up being like less than 5% there? Well, that is a significant difference, because the fact of the matter is, most of the promos that you own will never get played. They will never see the table in the first sense. I always use the example of my Dead of Winter promo with Felicia Day. Great promo, freaking amazing card. You put it in a stack of cards this thick of about, I don't know, like 60 or 70 characters. It's probably not that many, it's actually much less, but your chances of drawing are significantly low because you're not grabbing a whole ton of new characters as the game goes on. If you draw it at the beginning, great. If you don't, well, then it's not probably going to be ever drawn in the game, and then you only run into it once every 4 or 5 games, maybe, if you're lucky, depending on the shuffle. It depends on who shuffles, because this idiot shuffles horribly every time. So that's the question you have to ask yourself. And again, from a DC deck building standpoint, I mean, as a deck building, as they're offering more cooperative with this one time around, is this your preferred DC? DC, right? We all have our Marvels. Everybody likes this of the Marvel. They like the Iron Mans. They like the Avengers. They like the X-Men. They like the Fantastic Four. They like the whatevers. What is your DC ilk? And this is going heavy into the Batman, the Dark Side, Dark Knight aspects of things, and they're giving you just more of that. Now, again, I like the fact that they've offered some previous stuff, from other content and other expansions, and they offer at a good price. But the real question is this the point to which to get in? And the honest answer is I can't really tell on this page, because the other main selling point on this page is acrylic standees. And as much as I love acrylic standees, I'd make the argument that a deck building game as marking of the character in front of you to potentially show where you're at in this one, is what they say, is completely unnecessary. It reminds me of the opposite of the Japanese games, where they're like, we use cubes for everything, right? And don't get me wrong, I like that too. It's not always as cheap, especially on that side of the market, but it's the opposite example of everything's a cube, or now all of a sudden we have to have this deluxified in order to play it. Well, you don't. They look pretty. They're awesome. You can get a couple expansion content, like I said. But are you okay too with the new mechanics? When you're adding new mechanics, you're having power creep. How compatible is this going to be the old stuff? You have some of the old stuff. Is it going to work as well from that aspect of things as well too? And then it's going to cost you $75, and part of what you're paying for there, again, is a different box cover, a crossover pack you're not sure you're going to like, and whatever stretch goals are going to be included as well. So I'd make the argument that maybe if you're looking to get in at this point, $75 is still a lot, because you could probably buy someone's significant collection for DC deck building game with some of the even more recent stuff for $75, as opposed to one core box, which you may or may not be happy with as someone who's looking to get into it and not having enough content, because again, you want 2 or 3 expansions with every game that you buy, right? Because you're going to use all of them, like I said earlier. Facetious /s sarcasm internet. There you go. New gameplay, hostages, bribe, weakness removal, all of those things that go along with it. You're getting a bunch of the other expansions of what it can fit, and an extra box from that aspect of things. And they run down through what some of these other expansion contents are and the acrylic standees, and that's fine. But that's the question I have, is I don't know how compatible this is. I don't know what's going to be included in that sense of, needing that. And again, you're getting $350,000 here. What are we at? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cards right now. 6 cards out of a total of how many were in the base game? So I have 6 cards that I just said out of 200. So 3% extra right now. So that'd be the question is, are you a FOMO junkie? Yeah, then that's worth it, because you're going to get those promos that may be super hard to get otherwise. But in terms of actual gameplay content that's going along with it, that's not a ton. Now you give me an extra expansion, that's significant. But you'll also notice, okay, well, is that going to be available separately later? Where some of these are all, as you can see, marked Kickstarter exclusive. And I do not see that yet on here, but we'll see when it launches and unlocks, because they're not too far off either. So, I mean, I guess I like what they're putting out. I like the modernization. I like the thematic incorporation. I like the DC depth lore, and we'll kind of see where it goes. But is it a great starting point if you're looking to get into it? No. Is it a great entry point if you're looking to get back into it, if you already have a bunch of stuff? I can't tell. And if you can't tell, what's the answer? Say along with me in the comment section. Slight kid cat interruption there. Barrage, the legendary box. The legend, wait for it, dairy box. I don't know, right? Again, it goes back to everything. Do you actually need a box to fit everything? Do you think this is going to be everything that they're going to put out from Cranio Creations? Do you want more modular expansion? Have you played Barrage a dozen to 24 times in order to need the 2 new companies that they're offering you here in the first place with new mechanics that I can't speak of, because it's too heavy of a game for me to ever tell you anything off the top of my head to give you actual use for information from a mechanical standpoint? But it begs the question, just like any of these other games that come to crowdfunding, right? Like, why would you get it now? Is there really going to be that much of a price difference? You know what? It's about a wash right now. You're probably going to get a coin flip, because Cranio Creation stuff, especially with this sort of product line that they have, is a little bit of a toss-up. Because when I did the crowdfunding roundup, when this went live, I said, okay, well, this is what you're offering me, and this is what it's available at retail. And they're pretty close. And so it's just a question of if shipping is going to be a make it or break it for you, or as the 35th best game of all time, as it said right there, do you feel the need to get everything? But truth be told, when I see people going for this pledge level right here for the all-in, it's people that are FOMOing, it's people that are wanting to love this game that will never actually be able to get this game played. So the only reason that you would get this is you know it, you love it, you have somebody else in your game group with a copy, and you need to copy yourself. Otherwise, you let somebody else in the game group buy it in the first place and buy a box that stores it all, because also I'd make the argument that as cool as that looks, I feel like even with something like Voidfall, it was really a pain. It stored it all away because it stored it all really, really well. But to get it out was also a chore. And that'd be the other issue that I'd have with this as a whole, is a box like that going to fit? Or you know what? You just toss the insert in the regular boxes and you cram everything else in baggies into the box in the first place. That is a cheaper storage solution, and I am Dutch. And that is your Dutch tip of the week. Just throw things out and put them all crammed together. $29 or 29 euros though, I guess, as a whole. So again, with your shipping down there for 10 to 15 euros extra, I'd say it's going to be a wash. And if you want to get it and support them on the crowdfunding campaign, you can. But Incentive wise, I'm not sure that you necessarily need it, except if you want to get the box, which they're saying is exclusive, and the dual map, which was one of their previous offerings, I believe, as well. So I don't know. Check it out if you want, but I don't know, right? Like, that's kind of what you're risking here. So they've got a bunch of their other back product catalog here as well, all a bunch of their promos that they've done previously, and they're allowing you to pick and choose and piecemeal it if you so choose in addition. So if that sounds of interest to you, well, I'm leaving it there before I get myself in trouble. Now we are going to hit a few up here that have already ended. We're going to go with the Leviathan Wilds. I mean, again, if you saw my video from earlier this month, you know, we talked about this is my best played game of the month. I love it. I love what they're putting out here. Again, you know, almost $800,000 for a game the second time around for a not a significant price point, right? We're seeing the upper $100,000 and the millions of dollars. You're usually talking, you know, big miniature-esque based games or super deluxeifications. This isn't. So take that for what you will. But again, this is the key point with this. It was a great game for me from a cooperative aspect. Is it going to be as good for you? Do you like the randomization? Do you like the, you know, everything that's going to go along with this vibe? It is not super deluxeification. You're not going to get some of that, you know, just aesthetic pleasing table presence if that's what you're going for. The mix and match draw style of things, the boss randomness of the abilities that are going to be going in a turn sequential order, or which one is going to get super powered or which ones are going to get super powered as you go along, that may not behoove you. That's not going to be everyone's ilk. And from a cooperative side of things, that's not going to be the, you know, what you enjoy aspect of things. Apart from that, I mean, again, I go because it looks really, really interesting to you and it looks really great, not because anyone else says it's good. So don't ride the FOMO fear bandwagon as well. Is the new stuff going to be as compatible? Is the new stuff going to look awesome? Is the actual deluxeification component here kind of useful? Well, yeah, the dual layered track stuff is kind of useful, and I don't really need the rest of the stuff, but I just love the gameplay content. And it's going to be expensive though. Then they say flat out, it's okay. You know what? Expansions are never as great a value as the core pledge. It's true. You're always going to pay more from that aspect. So shouldn't surprise you. That was one of the main criticisms. If you're looking at this for $50 for the new stuff, I don't care. I mean, that is what it is. You can take that for all that's worth. I mean, again, plenty of other opinions out there. You're revealing, you're moving, you're mitigating. I'm not sure it scales as well, personally speaking, again, from my standpoint, at the lower player counts. So if you're primarily looking for a cooperative game at 2 players, maybe you just go with more the tried and trusted and true, more recent Sky Team, even though, again, it's, you know, I'm just using it as an example of a 2-player only cooperative game, right? Because I worry that sometimes, as I mentioned elsewhere, is it always as good at all player counts? So yeah, I mean, I think it's more fun at the higher player counts regardless. But that's what you have to ask yourself. Is scaling is really, really the make it or break it for me? Maybe it's a pass. Otherwise, again, watch it. Make sure it's you, not anybody else making that decision. Then we're talking Dungeon Twister 20th anniversary, right? This is a deluxeified game. I'd make the argument that this reminds me very much of a Wiz War style of things. And it's a question of how many players are you going to play it with again. Very viable at 2. Also Crazy Chaos Wiz War style at 3 and 4. You're going to have to buy more content though, and that's the divisive thing if you want to have these duplicates on multiple teams, if you will, and that's going to cost you more to get in on. I'd make the argument that the miniatures are nice, and I think it bumps up the price point significantly on this one. I've heard people say Paladins and Dragons is a good one to go in with. So if you're looking at that, I think this looks kind of cool. Now, which one is right for you though? And is it going to be as good? And how do you differentiate, right? Between the Paladin and the Dragon, the creatures here, what mechanics are going to be valuable? And that's going to be the other one that's, you know, hard to judge. Traps as well. Is it just enough? Or is it sort of the Pets Riders situation with Arcadia Quest where it finally jumps the shark as a take that crazy chaos, twist the actual dungeon tiles, mince and match around as you create your team to begin with, and go head to head, eliminate the other people on the map style of things. This is straight up Amerithrash chaos, take that. And don't pretend it's anything else. If you go into it thinking it's anything else, well, you know what? You're probably going to be disappointed. Not that it can't be fun, but just that, you know, you're not going to necessarily get what you want out of it if you think, again, it's going to give you something else more strategic. It's going to be incredibly tactical. When are you going to use things? Opportunity strike, opportunity cost all over the place, claiming your victory. I think it's doing something really cool. I'd love to see where this one goes, in a year or two, and what the feelings are then. Have you actually significantly upgraded it? Because I'll make the other argument right now that the consensus, in general speak, I would say, probably not on an individual basis, that Wiz War 8th edition is more well thought of than the 9th edition that was just redone previously. And so that'd be my only concern, is not only are you making it prettier, but like we were talking about with Pest, are you actually making it better? Bloodstones, Dwarves, and Djinn. Again, I talked about this in my August roundup as well. My mental block on some of these, just from a perceived standpoint, right? My personal mental block. I think this is a good game. I think it's asymmetric. I think it's giving you Root-esque vibes that are more accessible. But the dilemma still remains how much you think you like a game like that and how much you actually do. I think this looks incredibly, incredibly amazing. But, if you're where I am and you're only 85% sure, 85% is pretty good. 85% is not 95, it's not 98. And that's where my dilemma lies. Not because I can't afford it, but because I've just been burned too many times. $105 for everything new is a lot. You're still talking $150 before shipping for all of this. Am I going to late pledge? This is probably a serious contender for me late pledging, truth be told. And again, don't take my advice. Don't listen to me. Yeah, you're going to do it. But if it's one of those things where I'm trying to fit myself square peg into round hole. War game, asymmetric. Do I like it? Do I like the idea of it? I'll be honest with you. I'm sort of still split on Root. If this is more accessible, easier, is it going to work for me? Because I want to like it, but the truth of it might not be that it's the Root problem that I have, but it's the war game problem they have. And I don't know. I don't know. Again, say it with me. What happens if you don't know? You don't buy it for $170 shipped to your house, right? Don't do a me, right? Unless you want to back my Patreon and my Ko-fi and you want to, support me that way to allow me to do it. Haha, just kidding. Okay, next game. So what are we talking about now? Cats of Mont St. Michael. Again, this gives me sort of Mice and Mystics with a different vibe. And I'd argue that maybe it looks a little bit more complete. You'd hope that it's a little bit more balanced. And that'd be the question, right? How different is this than, say, something like Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion? Or even Mice and Mystics in the first place? Or the other in the Mice and Mystics lines that have sort of been reiterations and reimplementations of similar mechanics. So that'd be my question with something like this that is a little bit less tried and true. Why would you go with something like this as opposed to one of those other ones that I just mentioned that you know exactly what it is as a known product, right? This has known product versus unknown product written all over it. Standees, awesome. Deluxeifications if you so choose. You know what? Everything else that you want to take, but it's, sort of this campaign-ish scenario-driven aspect. So is that going to be different enough? Is it going to be well enough thought of 1 year, 2 years down the line, if that's what you're looking at? Or maybe you're looking at this and going, that fills some gaps of, Mice and Mystics and its issues to begin with as well, because it wasn't perfect by any means. But are you willing to wager that with what is provided on the page for, again, the perfection pledge of triple digits, right? This is Bloodstones, just for maybe you folks that like animals or that like dungeon crawl-esque light vibes. That's what you got to be aware of, and that's all I'm going to say from that side of things. Last up here on the late backs, So You've Been Cursed. I always, this is my mental block with this one. The 0 player count. I can watch other people play games. I don't need to watch a game play itself on the tabletop. If I want to go do that on the video game side of things, I can do that and hit the auto battle button, right? I think this one looks better than the So You've Whatever previous game from Scott Alms, with a 2-player map style of things, if you will, where one side is trying to get the wizard eaten and the other side is trying to, defeat the monster. But you use the same marker along the board to figure out what your actions are going to be. But again, I worry about balance with games like this, and I worry about the dynamic, or how meta is it going to be? Can you just pick up and play with anybody? Is experience going to be a significant factor when you're playing with your significant other, or when you're playing with your main group partner in whatever game situation, 2-player head-to-head duelers that you're going up against? I'm not going to make the argument about price. I'm not going to make the argument about collectors. They talk about you're going to get a weird promo that it says here. No, seriously, it says weird livestock promo. That's going to be the question. I love the aesthetic as well. This is my type of game. but I worry that I just don't know. Being able to compare head to head, but not until I get the mechanics in front of me to know how much is it actually going to fit me when it hits the table, a la the fit to print sales, where I love the ideas of those mechanics. I love those mechanics in general, but somehow there's a swing and the miss. So that'd be my only question. This is going to be a similar, you know what? I'm going to look at it as a late backer, but I don't need a UV accented deeper box and triple layered plastic boards with metal coins. So if that's going to be $49 and the premium is going to be $39, which is, you know, again, the ingredient tokens, which are hit or miss as well, and I'm not really, you know, sort of Radlands-esque vibing with it, well, $29 is the basic. I'm not sure it's going to even be that expensive as a two-player sort of light-driven game at retail. So I'd maybe wait. And that'd be where I'd go, is I'm looking at this more as a Radlands versus Radlands Deluxe and not needing the Radlands stuff. I got it for cheaper at retail there, and so I can be a basic boy here as well with this one. I went there. Then we're talking about Natera, New Beginning. I covered this one. I did a video on it. It's a worker placement. It's got hidden worker placement spots that are only flipped up and only available to you if you have certain area presence in each of the 4 quadrants in the first place. It's got a nice endo-driven anthropomorphic style of things with asymmetric factions to each give you different productions in the first place. So you have different options that you can choose from that standpoint. But again, I think the option of flipping these tiles up and having the availability and not necessarily knowing exactly what they're going to be in the first place to make your strategy more tactical rather than long-term strategic in the first place may not be behooving to what you're looking for. But if you're looking for the combination of a little bit slight Amerithrash with those aspects of Euro worker placement, I think it's doing something kind of unique, and I think it fits under the radar, sort of like Yonder from Sinister Fish earlier in the year. But if that doesn't appeal to you, or if you're not really convinced on needing, essentially a deluxified, upgraded worker placement style things in the first place, that'd be the reason you're getting it, not because of anything else. And then you risk the retail uncertainty. But again, are you risking not being able to get it all versus, getting it in the first place and not liking it? And that's the question you have to ask yourself with this one as well. Spooktacular. I'm a level 99 simp, and so this is going to be biased in that way. But truth be told, again, taking my bias glasses off here for a second and knowing that I'm biased about them in the first place and that I'm going to love this game and probably want to get it in my collection no matter what happens with this as well, is that there's not really a whole lot of incentive right now to back it on crowdfunding apart from getting the little extras that they're offering with the deluxifications. I absolutely love the little wooden pieces here instead of acrylic standees or instead of miniatures and not plastic and going with wood. I absolutely love that. I love the mechanics that they're going for. I think it gives me Marvel United vibes meets King of Tokyo, and it's going to be really straightforward in terms of what you're getting and how you're playing it. But when you're looking at these deals of what you're getting in terms of the cinematic release here, well, you're getting playing cards, you're getting a playmat, you're getting a 99 Heroes double. And so that'd be the reason you're getting it more than anything else, is to get some of that extra stuff, again, that you may or may not want. And so I can't tell sometimes how I'm going to feel about this. I definitely don't need playing cards. I kind of am mixed sometimes on playmats, because that is probably the one deluxification that I would justify in some of these situations that can be very useful. And I'm mixed on 99 Heroes right now because it's sort of a Marvel Snap-esque vibe, and it's going along with their other properties, which I think is very clever, and I think it's very unique, and it's, kind of bundling in there to get people a little wink, wink, nudge, nudge. We're going to get you hook, line, and sinker to get other of these as well in the future. But at the same time, if you don't know, or that's not your vibe, it's not going to be something you want to pay extra for, and so you want to get it at retail. Again, and retail side of things, it's slightly less. It is, truth be told. But again, this is one of those where that's where you back this because it's a small indie company rather than anything else. Mechanically speaking, it's going to be very light. It's going to be under an hour to play from a straightforward move, spook, terror, eat style of things in order to earn points or to get most tickets that you can. And that's going to be how it's going. I mean, it runs you through it right here, right? Spook abilities, devour, and still scared while getting bonus turns in the combo-driven card play aspects that it is. I think it's great. I think it's funded, and we'll see where it goes. And that's all you can ask, right? It doesn't matter how far above funding that you are. Remember, it's just whether or not you fund. And that's why I like seeing these true funding goals of actually $60,000 in the first place. So there you go. Quest Kids. Again, you're going to look at this and go, $34,000, Chris. That's nothing. This is a kid's game, folks. Getting 34 grand on crowdfunding is amazing. That's like, getting 34 grand with a dexterity game. You don't get that because it's a bad game. You get it because it's a freaking good game. And that's a super small niche on the crowdfunding scene in the first place. And that's not where those usually show up. It's Quest Kids, though, and my biggest problem with Quest Kids is just the setup and the teardown. I think this is really, truly one of the best kids gaming experiences at like a 6 to 7 age range of a slight dungeon crawl vibe to give kids feeling like they're adventuring and diving and delving and having control while still making it super simple mechanically, but not boring from an adult side of things as well. It gives you a little bit of power, but not too much. So you could get a little bored with it, but that's where the expansions come in. And that's my biggest conundrum is some of these expansions are just a little bit more set up teardown, and they add a little bit more mechanic as a whole. And so it's kind of one of those, are you okay with having more to have more? in the sense that, you're going to have more on the table. It's going to give you more of an adult feel. It's going to give you more control, more mechanics, more teaching, but it's also going to be a little bit more setup and teardown. And it's not insignificant, because that is my biggest bane. And I say that very lightly because it's a little bit tongue in cheek, because ultimately, comparatively to almost every other game I've talked about here, it's going to be a drastic drop down in terms of some of that stuff. But from a kids game standpoint, right, the most important thing from a kids game standpoint, having played with now the kids games in our house for probably almost going on 7 to 8 years, is accessibility. Accessibility is the number one thing, because if I do not want to set up and tear it down because I am inevitably the one doing 95% of that, then it's not going to hit the table. And so the stuff that is super simple and relatively straightforward, and not 5, 6, 7 piles of decks and 3 different piles of, this and that and that, that's what you're seeing more in adult games. It's trickling down to kid games, and it's making it a little bit more inaccessible. At the same time, providing those mechanics that you're looking for as an adult that you can still teach as a kid, right? Ooh, you can see how it's a tricky teeter-totter. And again, from this side of things, I'm not really sure what the price point is, because I don't think there's terribly wide availability on the secondary market, or even, because it's a kids game, right? Like, people don't pass those on, or they do pass them on and they give them to, flea markets or whatever else. I don't know. Where do you sell your kids games? But that's what you're going to be looking at here. Premium playmat, a little bit extra expansion. How many of the expansions do you need? Price is probably fine. Just adding another player doesn't do much for me. But I think it's a good game overall, and I don't really have anything bad to say about it otherwise, right? Like, I'm nitpicking. So it's just whether or not it's for you. I think it's a great, fantastic experience, and it'd be one of those up there with like Zombie Kids Evolution that I would recommend as like, the top games of kids from that aspect and that age range. But do you need to get on the crowdfunding is the question, or should you be trying to pick it up elsewhere like I just mentioned? Now we have to talk about this, because Wyrmwood has a super good reputation, but European shipping, and then there's also one over on GameFound right now, and I'm going to cover these both, in the same sort of collaboration, confabulation altogether. And the honest answer is, you should never buy a board gaming table from online. Let's just be truthful about this. I don't think that there's any reason that you should ever do this. I look at this, as my opinion, as all furniture. If you can't try it out and really test it, those chairs look like every other wooden chair that I've ever seen. And how sometimes you sit in a chair like this and you can't actually tell whether it's going to be comfortable or not until you actually sit in it. You can't tell how much lean back it's going to have, or how the angle of the chair back is going to be, and whether or not that's going to be too much, too little, or somewhere in between for you. You can't tell if the table size is going to be a little bit too high. You can't tell if you're actually going to like the inlay or the coloring exactly of how it's going to match your other wood or whatever wooden contraptions you have in your house in the first place, or if the exact fit is, again, trying to do the dimensions and then trying to see how it fit actually in front of you are two different things. It's just like couches, right? I see couches when we went couch shopping, I don't know, like a dozen years ago, and you'd see the couch that you thought was going to be super comfortable, and you'd walk over and you'd sit it and you go, well, that's not nearly as comfortable as I was thinking. Or you sit in a different one and all of a sudden you sink down to the bottom and you're like, well, that's not right. Like, it's Goldilocks and the three tables, I guess is what I'm saying in this situation. And if I can't have hands on, then I wouldn't bother with it in the first place. Stop it, Kickstarter, you're drunk. And again, here's the one over on GameFound, the Jade board and table by Moon Rabbit Tales. Again, just I don't know I would ever feel comfortable with this. And, again, if you're offering me other stuff on the table as like reasons to get it, again, like, this is a lifestyle thing. This is a huge family decision. And so I don't think my wife would feel comfortable. And, she's the one that does this off the cuff based off of stuff like this, that she just wants to get over with, and she wouldn't feel comfortable either from this standpoint. So I think it's cool. I think it's a very nice product. It's very tempting, but I would never buy furniture online without having to try it on firsthand. And this includes even stuff as I'm passionate about as this. Now, if somebody wants to send me a gaming table, that's a whole different ball game. I am available for sale. Moon Bunny. I talked about this one. You got two different types of bunnies hopping around on the moon. It's a tile placement set collection style gathering. As you're slowly building the combos and the recipes down here in front of you, you're moving them in orthogonal directions up to 3 at a time if you're one type of bunny, or in a straight line all the way wrapping around as many times as you want if you have the other type of bunny. And some of the recipes and the ingredients are going to allow you to swap them, and then you're going to create combos and points driven about how you can sort of slot them down here in the actual set collection style tableau building. In that way, you can grab one of them and set them aside and keep them aside, sort of like your Splendor reserves at a time, and then reintegrate them as you go on your turn. But that's all it's going to be. It's very, almost King Domino-esque in the same vibe, except you're just changing how you're drafting them in the same way. It's somehow a combination of moons and bunnies. I don't know, but it's doing well. Right? Like, you don't get $108,000 by not doing well. So people like bunnies, people like animals. I told you the aesthetic and the vibe and the thematic incorporation of a whole is 2024's nature, and this is no different. But if it's going to be that aspect for you, are you going to want something this light in the first place? And again, why are you going to be getting it on crowdfunding? Well, it's you just might not be able to get it elsewhere. That's going to be the issue. And what's the wide retail availability going to be? That you have to ask yourself. And again, how do you feel about which one of these indies creators you're going to support and which ones aren't you? Then last up, last chance, as you can see here, we have Phalanx's Lords of Heaven. It's a card-driven sort of civ building, area control, faction-based game set in the Middle East. And it's, like I said, very heavily card-driven, and you're going to get a little free expansion to go along with it. Now, Phalanx has a couple other games from GameFound side of things that are currently in the process of fulfilling as well. So that'd be the only question is, okay, what is this time frame actually going to look like? And that is evidenced by the fact that they say the delivery point for this time is going to be March 2026. Yes, you heard me right, 2026. So a year and a half out, and that's if things are on time, right? Because you usually had 6 months, because then you're looking at a 2-year time frame. Why would you back this now? You could see so much changing between now and then. Why would I give investment or a loan essentially for 2 years? That'd be my biggest concern with some of this stuff. Now, I'm not saying I haven't done it. I'm not saying I won't do it again, but that's a lot. And again, is it worth it from that aspect of things? Is it card driven? Everything I said, area control with exclusive content and price. If you're going to buy everything, no retail edition, no reprint. 3 years though. Again, that's wording right there. No reprint is what catches your eye. Read the fine print. 3 years of guaranteed of no reprints. Okay, that's fine. No retail. Deluxe edition is crowdfunding. Again, right? Like you're reading this. No retail edition. Well, deluxe is the crowdfunding. So there might be a retail edition. It just won't have some of the other deluxeified features of those little wooden meeples that we were just talking about, right? And if that's all you're getting there, that's fine, because I also don't see when you click on some of this stuff, for example, the content here is not exclusive, just 12 more leader cards. Ooh, that's a lot of cards though. So again, if it's not exclusive, who cares? Overview, as you can see here, right? 2 to 4 players, area control, card placement. That is an interesting combination of mechanics, and I'm not sure, again, as a game that should be playing 60 to 90 minutes, they say, is it going to be as straightforward, simple, and less analysis paralysis in those ways? Otherwise, mechanically speaking, I'm going to leave this one up for you to think about, look, see. But then that 2-year thing, again, is probably the biggest, make it or break it right now, because there's a lot of ways you can spend that money in the short term, in the interim, as well in more tangible ways from a board gaming situation, if that matters to you at all, right? It's a cost benefit analysis situation, and it's if I do this, I can't be able to do other things in the future. But if you're looking at this, you're probably not too constrained by that if you're buying these many board games in the first place. There we go. Those are my thoughts on the crowdfunding campaigns that are currently running. And you know what? One or two that recently ended. So everything all in between, and tell me what you think and where your head's at and what you're backing and what you're not backing right now. So there you go. As always, thanks for watching. Thumb it. Somehow, I guess that does more to help spread the word than anything else. And you know what? Subscribe if you somehow made it this far. So I don't know. That's all I got. Have a great freaking day. I got 2 kids crying outside, so I gotta go figure this out. Always fun in parenthood. Let's do it. Give them to flea shops.